In this video, I want to show you how to create a production bill of material for an item in Business Central. Remember that production bill of materials is only accessible if you have the premium version of Business Central. So from the menu, I will search for bill of material to find my production bill of material list. And in this case, I want to create a production bill of material, which is a copy of my back wheel, but using an alloy rim instead of the normal rim. So I will create a new bill of material, provided a number and a description, for instance a back wheel, and a unit of measure code in which I want to produce it when I do the manufacturing. After that, I can either enter the lines manually or copy an existing bill of material from the Action tab to make it easier for me to make almost the same bill of material. So I will copy my back wheel. And now I just can change the item number for rim to my item number for my alloy rim that I created, in this case. And the last thing I need to do here is to certify my bill of material to make it go into account when I create a production order. Now the bill of material is done, and all I need to do now is to add it to my item number that I'm going to produce. So I made an item number for this item 1210, which is my alloy back wheel that I will now find like this. And on my item number on the replenishment tab, I will fill in my bill of material number right here. So now this is ready. In Business Central, you can use work centers or machine centers on a production order routing. This means if you're working with production orders and you would like to define a routing on how to create your items, you can define steps in the routings, and the resource on that step would be either a work center or a machine center. Let's see how it works and the hierarchy of that. So if we go into a work center in Business Central, we can define work centers and machine centers below that level. Let's see how it works if we draw it. As column, you have work center number 100, 200, 300, etc. And they can be bundled into work center groups. So maybe we would like a work center group called machines, another one called employees, a third one called stock gear. And in the different work centers, we could define machine centers like drilling machines, on-bar machines, thread machines, or employees as unskilled and skilled work centers, with machine centers called mechanics, etc. So the machine center is part of a work center, and machine centers can have a capacity of, in this scenario, 2 and 1 and 1, etc. And we can define the machine center or the work center on the routing line. Be aware, if you want to work with employees as machine centers or work centers, you'll have to set them up as concurrent capacities to manage it in the system. Let's go back in Business Central to see how they look. So a work center, for instance, the assembly department here, have a lot of definition. We will run through the fields in another video, and you set up the work center in here. And likewise, you have a machine center, which is part of a work center. So if you go to the machine center here you can see all the tabs in here being like on the work center, and you have a work center number where you can assign this machine center to a specific work center. Those will both be explained in another video. Let me give you a walkthrough of the fields of a work center card in Business Central. The work center is a resource that we use for production order, and I will run through my machine department to explain the different fields in here. So in the general tab, I have my work center number that I defined, my name, in this case a machine department, if it's part of a work center group, and this is only meant to be able to grouping work centers if you have a larger production scale and you like to sort them into groups. There's no functionality in that. Otherwise, I could select alternate work centers if this can be substituted by other work centers. I could block it if I'm not allowed to use it anymore. And I can see the last date. Of course, I changed it. On my posting tab, I set up all the cost that applies to the capacity ledger entries coming from this work center when I use it. So there's a direct unit cost, which is the normal cost for using this work center per time that I set up or per unit. So I can see down here my unit of measure code is minutes. This means it costs 2.5 of my local currency per minute, plus maybe an indirect cost, plus maybe a fixed overhead rate. I could add here 0.5 to add to my unit cost. So this will be the actual unit cost that is used in my capacity ledger entries, but it's possible for me to see how much comes from the indirect and overhead rate and how much from my direct cost. My unit cost calculation could be based on time, which is normal for my normal used work centers, or I could set it up as units, which I would use especially for subcontractors where I buy per piece. And if it's a subcontractor, I could also choose to set the specific unit cost checkmark, which means that I could define the specific price for each routing. So even though I use the same subcontracting work center for many routings, they could have different costs to relate to whatever they're doing for me. I could add a dimension, project and department, which are my two global dimension here. A subcontracting number, if it's a subcontractor, I would just add the subcontracting number, which is a vendor number. That will automatically make this work center a subcontractor. The flushing method determines whether I would like to flush output in the output journal or the production journal manually, meaning it suggests the lines that I need to enter time on, and then I can enter the time, or forward, meaning when I release my production order, it will automatically create all my capacity ledger entry based on the expected quantities. Or backwards, which means it will flush my output when I finish my release production order. It will flush the quantity, output, and all the capacity ledger entries. Be aware if you set this one to forward on your last work center in the routing. So if you have a routing where the last work center has flushing method forward, it will automatically output the finished quantity when you release the production order. General product posting group to handle where the finance handling goes in your chart of accounts. And if you scroll down, you have the scheduling, which unit of measure is your work center working in, days, hour, minutes, pieces. Your capacity, meaning how many work center of this work center do I have and what is the efficiency. I might have 2 work centers for machinery with an efficiency of 85%. So this goes into effect when you calculate the calendar entries. How many minutes do you have available, for instance, per day? And this also applies to your shop calendar code that you have to select, and you define in your shop calendar what is your working hours per day. Queuing time is set up on the work center, meaning if you have a default queuing time per whatever time frame, maybe it's 1 hour before using this work center. If you need to set the goods before the work center, before using it for temperature reasons or whatever, you can set up a queuing time. This could also be used for subcontractors if you want to set a default queuing time of 1 or 2 days, depending on the time it takes for your subcontractor to handle the item. Consolidated calendar is used if you want the underlying machine centers, if those are defined, to have their calendar workload applied into your work center, so you can see on the work center level what your work center load is. If your work center has attached a location code, it's because you have it in a specific location. So if you have this work center in a warehouse, it would make sense to select open shop floor bin codes and to and from production bin codes for the warehouse people, where to put and pick the goods when delivering stuff to this work center. These are the fields on the work center card. Let me give you a walk through the fields of the machine center card. A machine center is part of a work center, meaning you have to define a work center number on the machine center to tell where to allocate it. And this basically is done because the calendar calculation is coming from the work center, so you cannot set up a calendar specifically on the machine center. It's inheriting it from the work center you're selecting here. So machine centers are part of a work center. You can give it a number, a name, and you of course can block it. And then on your posting tab, all the information on the posting tab is the same as on the work center posting tab, except you can change it per machine center. I will not run through it here because it's explained in the work center video. Likewise on the capacity, efficiency, queuing time unit of measure. See that on the work center video. But on the routing setup tab, you can define default setup time, wait time, move time, etc., scrap percentage and quantity, center head quantity, minimum, maximum concurrent capacities. Those are all fields used on the routing line, and this is just a default setup, meaning if you select this work center on a routing line, this will be default filled in with these figures if you have anything in here. So those fields are all explained when we explain the routing line in that video, and you can find it there. These are just default values. If the work center you chose here in the header is attached to a location code, that location code will be displayed here. And if it's a warehouse location code requiring bins, you could also select specific production bins, to bins, and from bins, and open the shop floor bins for that machine center. Your work center's capacity is defined by calendar entries that is calculated in the system. And this means that you have to calculate your calendar entries once in a while. And often we get questions from our customer that the work center doesn't work anymore, and that's because the calendar is not calculated. So here's my work center, and from here, from my Action tab, I have the function calculate work center calendar, and I can define in which period I want to calculate it. And if I recalculate in a period I already calculated, it will just modify my calendar entries. So when I run this, it will calculate calendar entries per work center. Be aware here that we have different shop calendar codes, meaning the shifts. We have a capacity that is different for each work center, meaning we have 2 machine centers and 3 assembly departments. And if I go into my machine department, for instance, and I can see down here, it's on the shop calendar, it's a 2-shift Monday to Friday that we have defined, and that's defined in the shop calendar code. So you can navigate into your shop calendar in here to your working days, and here you can define what is my starting and ending time. In this case, it's 1 long time, probably CNC machinery. You could also have a set from 8 till 4 o'clock, work shift code 1, from 4 o'clock till 7 o'clock, work shift code 2, etc. So when I got my days and my capacity and I calculate my machine center, I will also get my calendar. So I can navigate to my planning calendar and see in my work center calendar matrix all the calculated calendar entries, either per day, month, year, etc. This means my assembly department has on one day 1440 minutes available, defined by this calendar entry, made from a capacity of 3 and efficiency of 100, etc. Whereas my machine department has a calendar entry made by capacity of 2, efficiency 85, etc. So I need to define the capacity for each work center, and it also is used on my machine center that lies below, so they will also have the same calendar code here that it uses. In this video, I want to show you how to create a production order routing in Business Central, and this is only possible if you have the premium version. So from the menu, I will search for routing to find my routings. And in this case, I want to copy my back wheel routing to make an aluminum back wheel routing, which is a little more complex for me. And I'll copy that one. So I create a new routing with a new routing number and a routing name. And whether or not it should be serial or parallel, in this case, I will make it serial, 1 operation at a time. And now I can copy from my action menu, copy an existing routing or into the lines manually. In this case, I would like to copy my back wheel routing and just change the rim on tire here written in Danish. I will change that runtime for 45 minutes because it's a new operation and I'm not sure about it, so I want to be sure to have time enough. And with this, I will certify my routing, and now it should be possible to use on a production order once it's certified. And the last thing I need to do now is to attach this routing to my item where I want to use it. And in this case, it's items number 1210 that I will just find. It comes here. On this item, I can select bill of material and routing. And I already created my bill of material. So now I created my routing and want to select that one. Here. This is how it's done. In Business Central, you can use routing link codes if you want to tie a specific component to a specific operation, meaning from your bill of material to your routing. And this is done if you want to postpone the demand or the due date for the component, so you don't have to have it in stock too early. So as an example here, if I want to use my rim, spokes, socket front, front hub, etc. to my operation 10, I could use a routing link code A. Actually, it's not necessary if it's the first operation. And then if I want to draw my tire for operation 20, I could make a routing link code B and further on. So in this way, I can make a due day or due time for my component for a specific operation. Let's see how it works in Business Central. So in Business Central, if I'm looking at first of all, my routing link code, routing links, I could define whatever names I want to in here. Normally, I would suggest that you may call them 10, 20, 30, etc. because then you can use them on a specific operation with the same number and it's easy to figure out. In this demonstration, I would use A, B, and C to point that it's not a matter of the operation name, but it could be called whatever. So I'd like to attach routing link code A, B, or C to a specific routing and a specific bill of material. So first of all, I will find my routings. I will take a routing for whatever routing I'd like here, change the status, and then in the field routing link code, I could, for instance, set a routing link code here, on the final assembly. Let's put that as a routing link code B. Remember to certify your routing when you're done. And then I'd like a bill of material. And I'll take the corresponding bill of material or the one that I like to use here. And let's say that it's the lamp that I'd like to draw, item number 1500 with routing link code B, like this. And I could add more items, so I could also place a mudguard front with a routing link code like this, if I want to do that. And I have to remember to certify my routing, of course. So now I've tied those items together with the corresponding routing step. So let's see how it works if I'm making a firm plan production order. I'll just make a new one here on the item that I know is set up with the specific bill of material and routing. And I'll make 20 pieces. So this is all the standard way of making a production order, and you can watch that in other videos, of course. So if I'm looking at my component on this specific production order, I can see here my due date on all the component is the 17th of July, except for the two items I've added routing link code to. They are on the 19th, and if I'm looking into my routing, I can see that's the due time for that operation. An LLC code or low-level code is a code that is automatically calculated in Business Central and in most ERP systems, and is used for being able to do planning. So if this is my hierarchy of items, some purchase items are bought and they go into manufactured items, semi-finished items, or finished goods. And some finished goods might be on higher levels than other, meaning that if you have, for instance, a bike that you're producing and now you're making a new item, which is a package of bike containing 3 bikes, my bike that used to be a top level item is now a level 1 item because the package that I'm creating is the level 0 item. And what is important here is to figure out all the items that doesn't go into other items, meaning it's not a component in any bill of material, and you can see that in Business Central from the menu tab where used, so you can see, does this item go into anything? If it doesn't, it's a low-level 0 item. So the point is that all the items that goes into a low-level 0 item are basically low-level code 1 item. But an item could go, if we look in the low-level 2 coding, the left hand of those items is on low level 2 because it goes into both a low level 0 item and a low level 1 item. And therefore, in the name low level code, we have to find the lowest possible level that it goes into. In this case, it's 2 because it has on the right hand side a low level code 1 item. And this is the way we have to do planning. So planning the item here in the middle needs to be done in low level code 2. So we are sure that we have done planning on both the two items that it goes into. So the MRP planning will run in low-level codes, meaning first running here in low-level 0, so everything is planned here, then running low-level code 1, so everything is planned there. And be aware here that some of the part could be a purchase part, so where other parts are production parts, and from an understanding perspective, they could be quite different items. So you could also have a purchase item that doesn't go into anything because you just buy it and sell it. That would be a low-level code 0 item. This is the base functionality of low-level coding. There's two different ways of calculating low-level codes in Business Central. One is the automatically, which normally is to prefer, but it could be very heavy to work with in the normal day. And the other one is a batch job you run. So from the main menu, you could run the batch job by just entering here the low-level code, like this. And it says here, calculate low-level code. And you say yes, and it calculates all through the hierarchy. This is a very simple demo data, but if you have 50,000 items in 10 levels of hierarchies, this could be quite a batch job. So it could take some time. This is one way of doing it. If it's not possible to calculate, I'll get back to that, you will have an error while running this. The other way is if in the manufacturing setup, this is, in my opinion, the normal way of doing it, or the most used way, there's a check mark here called dynamic low-level code that could be set. If this check mark is set, the system will automatically calculate when you certify a bill of material, which means if you go in your production bill of materials, and I'll take my front hub, and I know that my front hub is part of my bike. So I have a hierarchy of items already here. And to change it, I have to change the status. Now, if I'm entering a bike here on the line, I'm saying that a bike is part of a front hub and a front hub is part of a bike, and that is not possible. This means if I'm trying to certify my routing now, because of the dynamic low-level code calculation, it says here that it's not possible. And the error message actually says that it exceeds 50 levels because it's trying to calculate again and again and again in an endless loop. Therefore, this is not possible. I have to change my bike, take it away again, and be assured my hierarchy is working correctly, and then I can certify it. So it can be quite complex if you have very high or very deep hierarchies to figure out where the failure is, because once I'm adding the bike to this line, it's a circular reference, so it's not like a top-level hierarchy. And this is a very common mistake for manufacturing customers. So set this check mark. I'll suggest you to do that. It's possible to work with different versions of routing and bill of materials, production bumps in Business Central, and I will show you how to set it up. For instance, here on my item 1000, I can see my production bump number and routing number is 1000, and I can see it's the same bump I'm using in many items here and the same routing number. Let me go into the bump number to demonstrate that, and the routing number functionality is actually the same according to version management. So I'll just show you in the BOM, my production BOM. So what I'm doing here is actually completely the same on the routing side. So this is my production BOM. I can already see here that I have an active version A, meaning what I'm seeing in this view is not the active version. So when I create a new production order, this bill of material will not be used with the quantity of 1 in the first 2 line, for instance here, etc. So if I want to navigate into my active version, I can go to versions and manage my version, edit in here, and I can see that I actually have chain assembly and mudguard front with a quantity of 2 instead, and this is my active version. So I have to be aware that I'm actually using the correct version or looking at the correct version. If I want to make a new one starting from 1st of July this year, I could just create a new version here. I'll just show you how to do that. Make a version code, whatever I would call it. I can define that myself with a unit of measure code, which is coming from the unit of measure table, of course. And I would like it to start on the 1st of July. And now it's possible for me to copy either my standard bill of material or from one of my version. And let's say that I want to continue on my version A. I can select from a list and copy my version A and then modify whatever I would like to modify on this bill of material line. And then I have to remember to certify it. So now I'm certifying this version here of my bill of material. So here we are, my version is certified now, and with the changed quantities, and if I go back and look at my production order, I can see now the active version is B. So it's handled by the date and the status. This means if I'm changing the status on my version B, it will go back to version A, etc. And it works the same way on the routing side. In this video, I'm going to show how to create a production order in Business Central. Normally, a production order could be created in two different ways, either manually or from the planning worksheet after calculating an MRP plan. So first, I'll show how to create the production order from the MRP plan. So I will enter my planning worksheet, and in this case, assume that somebody run the plan. And here I have my item that I like to process. This is a production item, it says in the plan out here, production item, and I can just click accept action messages and then carry out action messages and make sure that the production order is set to some action here, in this case to create a firm plan production order. This will create the production order and remove the line from my planning worksheet, and I can now find my firm plan production order in the firm plan production order list. And it's down here. So I just made this production order automatically from the planning worksheet, and it was created by the calculation algorithm. On this production order, which is now firm planned, I can enter my line, and on the line I can see the components, meaning the material requirements that are necessary for this order that I have to go and pick on inventory, and I can change it here manually if I want to, select some other items. I can also on my line see my routing, if a routing is defined for the item. A routing is the processes I need to perform to make this order. And I can also change the routing here. I can also from the process tab print job card and material requisition that responds to the same two tables, meaning material requisition is the list of the components that I need to go and pick on the inventory. And this is typically a document for the warehouse employee. And I could also print my job card, which is documents for the production people, and that will be one page for each operation. So in this case, I have 5 pages because it's 5 different operations, one for each step in the process. When I want to post on the production order, I need to release it first. So I need to change status. So the production order has different statuses, and now I will change status to released. And it will transfer this firm plan production order to a new release production order. So now I made a release production order. I could also have made the production order manually just by clicking new, either from the firm plan production order list or the release production order list. And I choose the source type item, and I select the number I'm going to produce, the item number and the amount. And from the process tab, I will select refresh, and that will calculate the production order lines. Here we are. So this is actually calculating the routing line and the component line that was showed before. And this is the same as the automatically calculated production order before. And again, I can change status in this one and release the production order so it's ready to actually go into production. So now I've made 2 different release production orders from firm planned orders, one manually, one from the worksheet. And if I enter my release production order list, I can see the 2 release production order. And normally I would print the documents from a released production order. That would be the most common to do. In this video, I want to show you how to change status on several production orders in Business Central from firm plan till release production orders. From my window, production change or change production order status, I can select several production order from a list. So I want to find my firm plan production order. I would like to filter on my number because I would like to change the last two of them. So I can add a filter, filtering on specific production order and interval like this. And now I have the two production order in my filter. I can go to my action tab, functions, and change status to, in this case, release production order. So this way I can change status from one kind of production order to another. And now I can find my two production order in my release production orders and here, and they are placed in the end here, ready to be produced. If you're using production in Business Central and you're also using work centers on your routings, you might want to know the load on your work center according to your calculated calendar entries. So you can do that in different ways. One of the ways is a report that you can do. So let's look at that one first. There's a work center load report. There's actually two, but they're very much alike. And you can set a starting date where you want to calculate from, how many periods, what the period length should be, and if you want only to see entries with a load percentage bigger than whatever percentage, and you can preview the report, and this will display the capacity load on all your work centers. So for instance, here you can see that my assembly department here, work center 100, has loads of whatever percentages in the different time slots. So for instance, here in the 4 weeks we're looking at, so in the last week here from March 22 till March 28, it's loaded 47.1%. It has a capacity, you can see that in the top here, just a second, has an effective capacity of 7,200 minutes in that week, and we have allocated 3,390 and available 3,800. So this is a report to display the work center load. You could also have entered the work center on the work center list, and I could place myself on the specific work center, and there's a functionality on the navigate pane called work center load, and it displays in a matrix, and I can select whatever period I'd like to see that in. It displays for my work center 400, my machine department, the capacity in the month, the allocated quantity, and the load percentages out here. So these are the two ways of looking into your work center load in Business Central. When you release a production order, you might want to check the shortage list first to check that everything is in inventory so you can start the production order. Normally you would do that from a firm plan production order or maybe even a release production order, but I think it's often a good thing to actually check the production order before releasing it and only releasing it if it's possible. In this scenario though, I will take a release production order and show it from that one. So on my release production order and the firm plan production order, I have a functionality called shortage list. And if I run the shortage list, it's the report, it will display my items in quantity on hand and my remaining quantity, meaning the demand quantity. So in this case, I need of item 1,300 200 pieces, and I have 180 on stock, meaning I'm lacking 82. So this is my shortest list, and normally they should go to 0 before starting the production order. That would be the most common thing. When you start up a new production order, meaning you're releasing a production order or entering a new release production order manually, you would like to normally print a material requisition to show your warehouse employee what to go and pick, or the production employee what to go and pick in the inventory. So in this scenario, we have a production order here, and from my process tab, I can print a material requisition just to get a print that I can carry around on my inventory to know what to pick. And it looks like this. Tells me which item do you need, what is the quantity per, what is the total quantity you need to pick, and it takes into account what you already picked. So if you print it again later on, it will see what is already consumed for this specific production order. So this is a picking material list or material requisition. From the release production order in Business Central, you can print a job card, and the job card is meant to follow the operations on the production order, so you can both use it for telling the operators what to do, but also to make the operators enter time that you would like to pick to enter back in your production journal or your output journal. So on the release production order, from the process tab, go into job card, and it will print 1 page per operation. So if you have a 6 operation production order like this one, it's 6 pages, and when you zoom into those, you can see the production order numbers, routing numbers, etc. You can see on the list below which item is part of the production order, the time needed for operation number 10 in this scenario, and the operator can enter here output, scrap quantity, date, and who did it. So it's also a report to enter into. And here you can see operation number 20, it's the second page, third page, etc. So it will print 1 page per operation to provide information to the operator and to make the operator give feedback after producing it. In this video, I want to show you how to post consumption on a production order, and maybe also check how many I can produce. So from Business Central, I will search for my release production orders list to figure out the item I want to produce. And I like to make the item number 1210, so I will enter this specific production order. Before I do any postings, I would like to see what I can actually pick and produce. So from my process tab, I can print a shortest list, and I will use my component demand on this production order and see what is actually on inventory to show me what I can produce in real life. So I will just pan this one. And here I can see my demand in the first column. These are the quantities I need to produce this item. And I can see my quantity on hand and my quantity on hand after production. So right now I'm lacking 5 pieces of my backup to be able to manufacture 25. So I can only create 20 items. And I can see my total needed quantity if I'm going to produce all the other items in here as well, all the other production orders. So now I'll just settle for producing 20, so I will pick items for 20 and produce that. After producing it, I will go on my lines to enter my production journal where I post consumption as well as output, but I'll show that in another video. So now I'll just delete all my output line because those are not interesting here. So I will just post my material consumption up here, and I'll change the quantities till 20. And here's 50 per piece, so I can say 20 times 50 to correct it. And I'll just enter the actual quantities that I'm posting. So I could post it more than one time. In this case, I'll just post everything in one go. So for my process, I say post. And when I post this, I will withdraw those items from inventory and put it into this production order. If I enter my production journal again, it will display the remaining quantity that I need to post, which equals the 5 that I'm lacking. In this video, I want to show you how to post time usage on a production order in Business Central. So from my menu, I will enter my release production order list to find the production order I am working on. In this case, it's the last one. And from the production order, I will enter my production journal, which is on the line function. The production journal is used for both item material consumption and for time and for output. So in this case, I will delete all my item lines. I can see here I lack item tool 5. And I can enter my setup time and runtime for the production order line, as well as my output quantity. Now I only made 20 items, so in this example, I will output 20 pieces on each operation, each of the first 3 operations, except for the third one. I will only output 19 because I've broken one in this example. And I only made the first 3 operations maybe, so I will just delete the last ones. I enter my setup time that I've used for each operation. So this is done after doing the manufacturing, and the operator will have to write down this time or enter it directly in Business Central, depending on how you like to do it. And I enter now my setup time, my runtime, and my output quantity, and I'm done with the first 3 operations. It's important that I don't enter output quantity on the last operation if I'm only working with time, because the actual positive adjustment on the inventory is made by this number, meaning the output quantity on the last operation. So after entering the quantity, I will go to my process and post, and this will post my journal lines with the time in here. When I get back to my production journal again, it will fill in all the remaining material again, and I can still enter more time on the last lines. In this video, I will show you how to output quantity on a production order in Business Central. This means to finish the quantity and put it on inventory after producing it. Before doing that, I want to show you my item list and check the inventory level for this specific item that I am producing. So the item I'm building on is this one, and the inventory is 0. Now I want to find my release production order that I've already been working on, posting consumption and some output. I will go into this production order, and from my line I will go to my production journal. And I can see here that I missed material for 5 pieces, but in this scenario I'll just delete those lines because we won't do those. And in this case I also lack to output time and runtime, setup time and runtime on the last operation, the last 2 operations. So in this case I'll output, for instance, 20 minutes in setup time, 90 minutes in runtime, but only outputting 90. And those 6 is not going to be built because I have broken some parts, so I will just delete those lines. Here we are. And the last line, I will have some setup time here and runtime as well. And now I also broke one on this line, on this operation, so I will only output 18. And this last quantity, the output quantity on the last operation in the routing line, will be the one that determines what to put on inventory. So when I, from my process, post this journal, it will both make some capacity ledger entry with the time, but it also create my item ledger entry. So going to my item list now, should display that I have some items on inventory now on this specific item number here. So I've just outputted 18. In Business Central, most of our customers are aware of the term a vendor, but some people also find the term a subcontractor in the system, and I'll just explain the difference from a vendor and a subcontractor. If you're going into a work center in Business Central, and I'll just take my paint department here, because I know in this scenario it's set up as a subcontractor, meaning it has a subcontractor number field in my posting tab, and you can select a vendor in this field. So this is set up as a subcontractor, the painting guide that we're using. And you might also have seen a subcontracting worksheet that looks like this, and it's used to calculate all the subcontracting jobs you need to do and to carry out purchase orders as subcontracting orders. So what is actually the difference? So basically the difference is that a vendor is somebody who sells us an item, meaning we're buying an item that we put on stock, and we buy it from a purchase order as a type item and store it in our inventory, and it adds to our item ledger entry. Whereas a subcontractor is a vendor that is performing a job for us. So he's doing an operation in a routing, for instance, like in my example here or before, a painter that is painting stuff for us. So we're not buying paint, we're buying the operation of painting, and we need to, or we like to be able to control that in our system. So subcontractors are also handled by purchase orders in Business Central and on the operation on the production order routing. So it's a little more complex than the normal item handling on purchase orders. And we have other videos to explain how you can work with the subcontractors. Subcontractor handling in Business Central is about making a vendor performing operations on my routings if I'm using production, instead of doing it myself. But it's also not about buying items, but buying a resource that is working for me. Let's see how it works in Business Central. So basically, I would like to use my subcontractor on the routings. So we'll just look into the routings, and I will define these setup in other videos. But looking in a routing for my bike, for example, this painting operation could be something that I'd like to send to a vendor for actually performing this operation. It's not an item I'm buying. It's not anything I'm putting on stock. He's just painting my bike as part of my process, my routing in here. So therefore, I've set up work center number 300 as a subcontractor. I'll show that in later videos. And if I scroll right, I can see I've defined waiting time. I know it's 2 days because there's some delay. So the unit of measure code here is days. And if I scroll further right, I can also see that I could define a specific unit cost for that specific operation. So it's not only following my work center, but I could say here that when my vendor is painting this specific bike on this routing, this is the price for the painting job. So in this way, I can use subcontractors that are actually vendors performing work for me. Setting up subcontractors in Business Central is actually a vendor I create that I attach to a work center. And let's see why that makes sense. So first of all, to explain it, I will look into my routings just to show you an example of my work center 300 here, which is a painting. The routing is designed for work to be done, for something to do some time, some capacity ledger entries or capacity performing on an operation in my routing. And therefore the type of the routing is a work center or a machine center. So you define a new work center that you would like to use as your subcontractor and only just attach a vendor to that. It's quite simple to do the setup. So basically what you do is just to go into your work center and here, create a new work center or find the work center you would like to work with. In my experience, many customers would like the work center time units to be in days down here in the scheduling tab, because I would normally prefer to calculate in how many days before I get the item back from the vendor. And basically we just set up the subcontractor number here in the posting tab, meaning picking from the vendor list. Then it applies to the subcontracting worksheet that we will display in another video. So this is the only setup required. Subcontracting operations, meaning subcontracting work that I'm sending to vendors, only applies to production orders. So if I don't have a production order, it wouldn't make sense to try to create a subcontracting order. So a subcontracting purchase order is created through a worksheet from a production order. To show how that works, I will just go into my subcontractor worksheet to show you nothing is here. So if this is my worksheet and I calculate my subcontracting operations for everything, nothing pops up here because I have no release production orders that are not already handled. So what I'm going to do is to go into my release production orders, create a new production order that I'm aware that contains some subcontracting operation on my bike. Of course, that's what we do here. Process, refresh, and now it calculates my routing. And one of the routing steps, if I look into my routing line here, one of the steps would of course be my subcontracting worksheet that I have set up. So I will now expect this one to come into my worksheet when I try to calculate it again. In here, I will just calculate everything. So here we have an item. It says actually it's an operation, but it is for a production of item number 1000. But in real life, this is operation number 35, which is a painting operation. And I might even want to change the description here, painting my bike red or whatever. And then after doing that, I could carry out action messages, which will create my purchase order, which is a subcontracting order. Now my journal is empty and I can find my purchase order somewhere in here, and I will expect it to be the last one, which is my multicolor expert. And here when I look at the line, I can see actually it's an item number, but it says painting my bike red, and in hidden fields on the purchase order line, it will also display the production order number, production order line number, routing link line number, etc. so I can post this as a subcontracting operation. So this one is ready to give away to the purchasers, tell them to communicate with the vendors about this painting operation. When I'm using subcontracting orders in Business Central, meaning purchase orders created from a subcontracting worksheet, I won't do any inventory adjustments. I will just create capacity ledger entries and add those automatically to the production orders. So in this scenario, I have my purchase order here. It's already received, but it's not invoiced. So I can see here, if I scroll right, that my quantity received is 5. My quantity to invoice is 5. And since I'm not running expected cost, I know that no cost has been posted to the production order, but the capacity ledger entry is already made because on this purchase order line, I have a production order number and production order line number, etc. Let's see how it works. So if I find my released production order in here, and I know it's the last production order, as I can see here, if I navigate this order, the entries, I can see there's no item ledger entries, nothing happened yet because I haven't posted any consumption, output, anything else than this purchase order, which is a subcontractor. And if I look at my capacity ledger entries, I can see in here that I do have one entry and it's coming from, I can't see it here, but I know it's coming from that specific purchase order number. And if I scroll further into my value entries, because I'm not running expected cost, I can see that I have no value entries in here as for now. Whereas when I invoice my purchase order and I enter my invoice number like this on the purchase order, and maybe on the actual invoice the cost was something else, so I will just enter my changed cost and I post the invoicing of the purchase order. Here we are. Now when I look at my release production order, again, and I find my entries, capacity ledger entries we had here before, and I navigate further into my value entry, I can see here it created an value entry and the cost amount on that specific value entries. So this means that the item did not go to inventory because it's not an item, it's a process, and it's taken up as work in progress on my production order, and it's going to follow my output item and follow the value on my output item, which is item number 1000. In this video, I will show you how the work in progress system is functioning in Business Central from a production order perspective. In this situation, I have a release production order that I have already posted materials on and capacities. So if I go into my production order and I look at the production order statistics, I can see that my actual cost on this production order is 8,774. And these are my actual costs. They are now on the work in progress account in the chart of account. And I'd like to check that out. So I will leave my production order, go into my chart of account, and look for my work in progress account, which is in this case in the end of my account schedule. So I can see here my manufactured item has a balance of almost 200,000, and my work in progress account here is 8,700. So I can actually see the actual amount here. If I drill down to this one, there's more than one production order, but the other production order, for instance, this one, 101144, is already going into zero because it took that amount out of the VIP account. So if I drill down a little, I can see on this production order here, 49, that all the entries are positive because they are all on the VIP account. This means that it only represents money because I cannot count the item even though it's produced. I need to finish my production order before it's taken out of the VIP account and transferred to my manufactured item account that I have set up. So I will try to find my release production order again. And now I will change status to my production order to finish. So while changing the status, and I cannot, meaning that I cannot open it again, it will finish the production order, and it says here some output is missing, and then it finished the production order, and now my VAP account is 0 because that was the only open production order, and I would have made an amount on entry of the negative amount and transferred that into my manufactured item account. So this should also be the last entry here. So here it is on this account. So this way it's now on the actual inventory account and not VIP. The only reason this happened automatically is because in my inventory posting setup, my inventory setup, here I have checked that cost posting should be done automatically, and it should always also run the cost adjustment automatically. If I didn't set that up on the inventory setup, I need to run manually each month or whatever. First my adjust cost item entry job, which will adjust the item entry cost, and then afterwards the post inventory cost to GL. Those two batches will do the same. In this video, I want to show you how to view a production order statistic, seeing how much money you have used on the specific production order in Business Central. But before doing that, I'd like to point your attention to one issue on the item card, because that is important to understand watching the statistics. So going to the item number 1210 that I'm producing, I can see on my item card in the field number lot size that it is not filled in, meaning it's 0. Using Business Central, the lot size will default be set to 1 if it's entered as 0. So when calculating, the lot size will now be defined as 1. And what does the lot size express? It expresses the normal quantity I want to produce an item in. So when I enter my release production order now, and I've done postings on materials and output, time and material on this item, my back wheel. So when I'm watching the statistic for this item, the base statistic was based on a lot size of 1, but in this case I'm actually producing 25. So when I enter navigate, order, statistics, I can see the statistics on my release production order. This means the first column, my standard cost, comes from the item card. And here I can see my capacity cost being very high. And that's because my setup time on the routing is divided by 1 because the lot size is 1. Whereas the expected cost is very low because I'm actually producing 25, or I meant to produce 25 because in real life I was producing only 18 for some of the operation, 19 and 20 for others. So my expected cost is calculated on this specific production order with pieces 25, and the actual cost is the real cost that I've consumed and outputted in time. So I can see my deviations in percentage and in money on the specific production order. This actual cost, the 6,820, is the amount that goes into the VIP account and awaits there until the production order is reported finished.